Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and this is the 31st of August. We are nearly at the end of the month here. This is the end of the month, not nearly, we're there. And it's another gloomy day, which is why the lighting is kind of weird in this room. The lighting's weird in my house anyway. Good morning, Alex. And yeah, I was just saying how it's another gloomy day here. I think we've got today, tomorrow, and then I think by the time we get to Monday's supposed to be beautiful. Monday's going to actually be a very busy day. It's Labor Day, but I think I'm trying to think what's going on then. I think I'm going to be, that's right, I have this live stream that I do, and then I know my sister's picking me up. Was that the day that we were going to have? No, actually I have a call on Tuesday with somebody in England, with a friend of mine in England. Actually the original person who had done my marketing and the person I had stayed with for a month in Kent when I was living in England the first time. Stayed at her house with her and her two cats. And, so we haven't caught up in ages, so we're going to catch up on Tuesday. And yeah, we are definitely, I think we had I might have mentioned this yesterday, I don't even remember, but we have there's a page I follow called Weather New Jersey, and it's I think the guy's name is Jonathan Carr, and his forecasts are really good for us locally here. And he was talking, he posted this thing like, attention, bulletin, pumpkin spice warning, as of Monday, you want to make sure you're stocked up on your pumpkin spice. And a lot of people were laughing. They're like, is he kidding? And I'm like, no, that's his way of saying it's going to be fall weather. It's like, it's coming in. And probably this past week was the last of the hot days. I did actually, last night I did you might have seen the post here on IG. I had actually done a crystal Reiki sound healing. Sounds like a lot of stuff. Good morning, Joanne. And so with this healing last night, it was very interesting. It's the first time I've done it. Karenna, who owns the shop, does what they call crystal Reiki. So she actually puts crystals on. I'm not quite sure. It was interesting. I mean, for me as the practitioner, trying to do Reiki while all this other stuff is on the person, I don't know. I haven't quite gauged how I feel about it, because sometimes I feel like it was almost blocking me in the way I was trying to do stuff. And as I told the person I was working on, I'm like, it's hard for me to sometimes tell the difference between what I'm feeling with the Reiki and what's happening with you. And it was weird. It was one of those situations where my hands were very hot, but she felt cool air on her the whole time. So I don't know. It was just interesting, but I did, but we did pick up on some things, and she asked me about, certain things that I picked up on for her and so forth, which is pretty normal. But last night now, I know at least, I know, Joanne, you just signed up. We're doing the intuitive development class on Sunday. Did you visualize your energy channeling through the stones? Not particularly, no. Because when I do Reiki, it's not my energy. It kind of just, it goes and it does its own thing. So if that's what it was going to do, then it was going to do. Rahani is actually one of the modalities where you do a lot of visualization, although it's still not you doing it, you're channeling it. But the Reiki, you're literally, you do your symbols, you open, you call, and then you just go. And good morning, Pat. Wow, a lot of you here for a Saturday morning. I'm impressed because it's early. This is the day when people like to sleep in. Although I was up I think I woke up at 4:44 this morning. So so it's really so I don't know. So anyway, the crystal Reiki, it was interesting though, and Karenna was doing also the sound piece of it as well. She's trained as she's at least beginning her training as a shaman, so she was kind of adding a lot of that stuff in. And so it was very interesting. It was a 45-minute sessions. And it was nice, and I got to see some practitioners who I haven't seen in I think we figured it out was a year since the last time I had seen them, because they had opened the wellness center at this time last year, and then there were some bumps. Well, the energy, I should say, I've been practicing my distance healing with my golden healer. I put my sciatica volunteer asleep. Well, energy healing's powerful, and it's interesting. To your point, is that when you're doing it over a distance, a lot of people think, "Good morning, Sudha." A lot of people think that when you do it over a distance that somehow it's, I mean, I'm not saying you think this, Joanne, but I mean, there's some people, oh, you have a skull. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's another way that you can do it. I don't particularly do, I think the only thing I've ever used when I do Reiki on in-person clients is oils. I use essential oils sometimes. But very minimally, really. But yeah, because I was just saying we were doing crystal Reiki last night with sound healing, and this was Karena's idea, and so and again, I think overall it went well. I mean, it was fine. It was actually a family who would come in, who are regulars there, and it was like the one young woman, her mother, and then another friend of theirs, I guess, or I don't know if she's a friend or if she's a relative. I couldn't remember exactly, but the three of them were there, and so we just worked on the three of them. And there were three of us. So it was nice. It was just a nice reunion of some practitioners. And, and again, I'm doing more Reiki. I'm doing more Rahani than Reiki these days, but I'm still like, she put it, she said, you're still my lead Reiki teacher here. And I'm like, well, okay. So I guess right now I'm the one mainly who's doing Reiki 1 and 2. I haven't mastered anybody there yet, but it's still too new. So, in any case, I dealt with that yesterday. And while I was there, I was looking at my, after we were done, I was kind of checking my phone before I left the store. And there was a, cool, sounds fun. I think I'm going to try you're going to try the Rahani. Yeah, definitely. Definitely try the Rahani. It's, I have a lot of Rahani clients now. And in fact, I emailed Neshla Avi, who is the founder-elect of Rahani, the other day because I had a question in last week's intuitive development class about working with people with epilepsy. Now, when I took the class with Neshla, she did mention that, yes, you can work on epileptic patients, but whenever you're doing the Rahani, do it from the shoulders down. Like, don't do anything to... like, the Rahani will do what it needs to do for the head, but don't you do anything for the head. Yes. And it's so but I was concerned because this person had mentioned having a particular device that was dealing with the vagus nerve and stuff like that, and I was just like, okay, I want to be really careful because I know, like, with pacemakers and stuff like that, you sometimes have to be careful with energy healing. And Neshla did get back to me, and she says you can absolutely do it via distance. She says, but that person should not have hands-on. She said, because hands-on would be way too much for what they've got going on, but via distance, there should be enough there that, that the hands-on does seem to add another component to it. But as some of you can testify to, distance works just as well. And it's because energy travels. Energy is energy, and it goes where it needs to go. I had a Rahani client actually before I did that. So yeah, and because, well, you think about it. I mean, this is like an energetic exchange right now. If I decided to send Rahani out to a group, probably you would feel something because energy is not limited by, we tend to think of things, we limit ourselves in the way that we think because we think, oh, okay, well, I'm in this body or I'm behind these walls or I have this thing in front of me, which is why we talk about having energetic protections, because energetic protections are not the same as, a physical, as a real true physical barrier, as a physical barrier would be, because energy doesn't, physical barriers, everything is made up of molecules, right? Everything's made up of atoms, molecules. There's all kinds of energetic interactions going on with everything that we see that appears to be solid. And when you're talking about energy, pure energy, you're talking about something that can pass through any of that. Because again, if we were really seeing things as they are, like on a quantum type level, we think linear and not expanded is how I would describe it. Yeah, well, we're not able to perceive that way, and I think that's probably to our benefit, because I think if we literally, I think it was described to me once as the human body blinks in and out of existence like over 100 times a minute. And if you were there just blinking in and out of existence all the time, and that's how you perceived yourself, we would not be able to function in the dimensional space that we do the way we do. I mean, we talk about the brain as a filter, but it's a filter that's there for a reason. We expand our perceptions to a certain point, but if you go beyond a certain point, it's literally more than the human brain can comprehend. So trying to focus on these things, we can only talk about them on the very minuscule level. And as I've mentioned, with quantum effects, a lot of times they're only seen on this very micro level, and they're also only seen usually in very, very cold conditions is where you can observe quantum effects. But I mean, I don't know that necessarily means they're not happening. It's just not something observable to us. Or they say, well, it's something that'll fall apart, with certain conditions. But I just feel like that's an area that we don't know enough about yet, regardless of whether it's quantum or not. The bottom line is just that we are, the solidness of things is a perceptual thing. That's what we perceive with our five senses, and honestly, it's probably the reality is much more. How do I want to put it? The reality is definitely. If we could really get beyond what our senses tell us, fully get beyond what our senses would tell us, I don't even think we would know how to approach it. It's like approaching meditative experiences when we talk about experiencing samadhi, or when we talk about experiencing, something of a meditative state that they refer to as like no thing or a nirvana state or something like that. Is energy referred to as subtler senses? You could think of them that way, although energy is just something everything's made up of, basically. When people talk about ghosts and ghost sightings, basically it's like, well, what are you looking at there? You're dealing with some kind of an energy. You just don't, that seems to have a particular kind of perceptible form. And oftentimes that might be perceived like if you walk into a room and your hair stands on end. Or like we were talking in the class about the different type of clairs, whether you're clairvoyant, whether you're clairsentient, whether you're clairaudient. Some people were talking about having scent, I gotta look up the word. It basically has the word olfactory built into it. But yeah, something beyond those senses that we have that deal with material things and what we see in three-dimensional space, which is what we think of when we think of, sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. That's in this particular venue. We have extended versions of those senses. So in that sense, yes, you might be talking about subtler senses. When you're talking about the movement of energy, it's just something that happens. It's why I think with a lot of channel techniques, first of all, channel techniques are good because they don't use your energy. Okay, Reiki is not my energy. I remember I was talking to a Vedic astrologer who was very... I noticed she's somebody who doesn't get a lot of appointments because she just seems to have this rather authoritative way about her when she reads things. Like, I have like a 12th house Venus, and she says, well, why do you want to move abroad? You have plenty of good things in your country anyway. Like she had that kind of a manner. And I'm like, I don't think it's your job as a Vedic astrologer to tell me where I should live and what I should do. Like, that's not anybody's role. As if you're an advisor for somebody, you can tell them what's there. And the person may or may not choose to do that. Well, I know someone like that. Yeah, there are people who are like that, who tend to be, and I don't know, maybe they think they're doing it for your benefit, but it's just like, there was something that came up recently, which I won't get into, but the one thing I find, and I think for me, there may be a particular family reason why I feel this way, in particular, family dynamic. But because my sister feels the same way that I do. But when we, at our age, with the experience we have and the things that we've done, when people start scolding us like we're 5, or you should be doing that, I immediately shut down. I don't know about you guys. I immediately shut down. The first words in my mind are not usually very polite ones. But it's because that's my trigger, because I'm just like, don't, thanks. It's the same thing when I have, if I have a plumber or electrician or somebody who comes to my house and starts going, well, now, honey, this is this way. And I'm like, yeah, I have 3 postgraduate degrees, and I'm 50 some years old. Like, please stop talking to me. Yep, I'm done at that point. Yep. I'm like, don't talk to me like I'm an idiot. Thanks. Or you can leave my house. I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for people talking to me like I'm, like I haven't figured out, I'm not potty trained yet. I don't like to be talked to like that. And maybe some people don't mean to talk to people that way, but I call it almost like, with women, I call it almost like mother hen energy, and sometimes it's actually well intended. It's somebody who actually just says, oh my gosh, you're doing this thing, you should really do it this way. Haha, hate that. Yes, I'm not. So I don't tend to respond, sometimes even when people are joking around with it. Sometimes I find that I'm, I kind of, that is kind of a thing for me, but I think it's also because I'm my age. My sister's going to be 61, and she said, and my mother still talks to her like, now you better be careful when you walk down the stairs, and you better be careful. And my sister's literally like, like, no, I haven't figured out how to walk yet. I'm only 61, And again, even if you want to say, well, it's just mom doing mom stuff, and it's still annoying. Okay, I'm just gonna call it. It's still annoying. If you raised me and I've gotten this far in life and I have no common sense whatsoever, then you have to worry about maybe how you raised me. You should be grateful that you raised me and that I've gotten this far. But when people talk to me like I'm mashing peas in my hair or something, like I'm just like, yeah, I'm not an infant. Thanks. I'm not. I haven't just walked out in the world for the first time and going, oh my God, what would happen if I stuck my finger in this electrical socket? So, yeah, I just, there's just something about it that whether it's intended to be condescending or not, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just, people just have that control thing as part of their personality. But I'm just like, I just find, it depends on the situation. If I feel like somebody's genuinely just like, okay, they just have a personality like this, I'm just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. Other times, if I feel like this is somebody who literally is looking at me that way, I tend to have a slightly different, maybe a bit more of a defensive response. Well, you don't have the what do I do now, damsel in distress energy. You're right, I don't. I don't. I imagine a lot of people here actually on this live stream don't have that. Yeah, you're right, I don't have that energy. So when people are talking to me like I haven't figured it out, I'm just kind of like, I think a lot of us are just kind of like, yeah, thanks. I am, there's a Monty Python sketch. I think I was going to send this to my sister and I forgot. It was called, and of course the name is meant to be a joke, Mrs. Knickerbaiter. What have it away. What it is where like it's John Cleese and and of course I think it's Terry Jones who's playing like his mother, and then Michael Palin is playing this Mrs. Knickerbaiter, which of course is meant to be a joke name. What gave it away? Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think any of us come across like, I don't think any of us are like that here. And yes, no, fair enough. Yeah. But in this one, she's like walking up to John Cleese. He sees this grown man like in a suit, and he's like, "Oh, good morning, mother. Good morning, Mr. And she's going, "Oh, look, he's talking," and she's shaking a rattle in front of his face, and she's going, "Oh, like talking to him," and he just stands there and he nods. And then she says, "Can he talk?" And she's pointing at him, and he goes, "Of course I can talk. I'm Minister for Overseas Development." And it's one of my favorite sketches because I'm like, yeah, that's literally how it is. That's literally how you feel. And then she spontaneously combusts, and he says, "Good thing too." And he walks away. So anyway, it's one of my favorite Monty Python sketches because I can relate to it so well. And so anyway. But okay, so just kind of back to talking about intuition, which was going to be my topic for today, and following your intuition, and speaking of interactions with people and picking up on love that and the silly walks. No, yeah, well that one is funny. That one is a classic also. But I had this thing last night. I was looking at my IG after we were done with the session, and this person, there's this random person liked my page, and they started liking all my videos and started making, at least on one video, made a somewhat suggestive comment. And I'm like, who is this person? So I look at their profile, and there's a profile picture of this guy, and it's like, kind of like an all-American dad kind of thing with two kids, and there was like all this stuff in it, and had a website that actually linked to some kind of California resort. Because literally my something went off in my gut. I was like, it wasn't just, I have had people get on my live streams and say, "Oh, wow, you look really good today." And they're men. And I don't, but there's something about their energy and the way they interact with me. It's not a violation of my boundaries. It's just like, oh, okay, you think that, thanks. You got him too? Oh, okay. So maybe he was looking at people on this live stream. Same with your partner. Oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting. I blocked this guy. I blocked him because I'm like, I don't want him participating in anything on my thing, because I just got, I mean, just looking at it, and I'm like, he's looked at like 10 of my videos and he's made these comments, and I'm like, this is also not who you are. This is a fake profile. This is a fake. Blocked immediately. Yep. So I was just looking at this, and so I went, yeah, I just, okay, so we got the same. That's interesting that we got the same person. So I don't know what this person is doing going around, but I guess the point being, especially in social media, when you have a lot of people who might, good job, yes, thank you, yeah, well, yeah, and to Alex too, certainly, it's just, you get this gut feeling, and you kind of know the difference, okay? I think there's a tendency to, and I don't know if you find this, because I think everybody currently on this live stream is female, it's I don't know if you have this thing with men, like when we're in a space and you are with somebody and you have an uncomfortable feeling about somebody, a lot of times what kind of things I have gotten back, feedback on that in the past would be like, kind of like, oh, you don't know that person, just be nice. You're just being prejudiced, right? You don't know anything about them. How would you like it if they judged you that way? And they make you feel guilty about your own instincts, making you feel like, no joke, you read my mind. Yeah, like, do they think that they're just like, yes, let me just fly off with a random stranger? I know, exactly. I've had that in places where I've had random people walk up to me and say stuff, and I'm looking at them, I'm like, I won't repeat what I said here on the live stream, but I'm just like, get away from me. I don't know you. And yeah, like, oh yeah, random person I ran into in the grocery store making comments to me. Yeah, I'm totally going to go off with you now. Like, yeah, like, I just look at them. I'm just like, get the away from me, but that's it. But there's people who will do that. And there's this, I have, yes, I hear you. You don't trust. Right, and this is just it. And there's the line between who you trust and who you don't trust. And this is at least one good reason to have intuitive development, or at least to learn to trust your intuition. Because oftentimes, even if it's somebody who in the end turns out to be a harmless kind of a person, it's like you know when the interaction is not good for you. But a lot of times we're made to feel like immediately, or they send sexually suggestive texts. Nobody has texted me. I've had people try to message me on WhatsApp and they get immediately blocked. Like, you think I find it remotely attractive. Yeah, well, yeah, it's also kind of like men sending pictures of their stuff, which has not happened to me. But I'm like, that literally does nothing for me. It's probably not actually intended to do anything for me. It's intended to probably be repellent. But I'm just like, like when I hear about people doing that, I don't know. That just tends to be a body part that tends to be, I'd be careful how I say this. I want to say way overvalued. I think men sometimes will tend to be, as was recently discussed somewhere, tend to be obsessed with size and things like that. Let's just say. And I don't know if women are really care as much about that as they do. Let's just put it that way. I know for me it's the reverse of what everybody wants, but anyway, we won't go into that territory. I'm like, no. If you tell me like, oh, I'm like a foot, I'm like, ugh. And it's like, all our stuff wasn't even someone trying to look like this. Yes, that's exactly who it was. That's what my guts were saying. Yes, that's exactly the guy. And I'm like, no, you're not. And the fact that you had pictures of kids and stuff up there also kind of bothered me. I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I totally, and who knows, maybe he's even like aliased somebody else's account and stole it. I mean, people do that kind of stuff too. I mean, and kind of copied their pictures as their own. People find ways to do stuff. I've heard of certain other people, readers and stuff like that who've had that happen, where somebody like duplicates their account, and then if you actually look at the account, or actually what I didn't look at was what the account origin was, because sometimes you will find it is from some random country. It's not from here, but somebody's trying to look like a certain thing. But again, your instinct tells you that that's not what it is. And so anyway, not to kind of go off onto that tangent, but just the idea that I think one of the barriers to intuition, it's scary that there are women who will fall prey to this. Catfishing, yeah, exactly. And that's just it too. There's certain things that are obvious. Well, when it comes to scamming and stuff like that, like I get these emails all the time that my Xfinity account is overdue, and I'm like, no, it isn't. And so all you have to do is look at the header on the email, and I'm like, oh, this comes from Atlantic City Casinos. Sure, they're the ones who are interested in my Xfinity. They'll delete, block. And it's just, to me, that the things, I can understand maybe older people who don't know, like when it comes to stuff like that, but people who are doing stuff, I have had some friends who, I don't know what they look at in a profile and think I'm gonna start targeting that profile, but I don't know. A lot of times, because when you're trying to kind of set up your own boundaries and feel out and find your own space, certainly years ago, there was this attitude that if a man paid attention to you, you should be flattered. And of course, I think we've gotten a bit beyond that. Not that maybe sometimes you shouldn't be flattered, especially if it's somebody you're interested in. They're like, ooh, really? And actually, like I said, I do have people who will comment regularly on stuff and will say certain things, but they don't do it in a way that makes me feel like they're creepy. They might just say, oh, you look nice today, and then that stuff is just creepy. And so the one it gets to, or the people who Facebook message me at 3:00 in the morning, like, hey baby, I'm like, who are you? Go away. I don't know you. And even if it's somebody who is friends with other people I know, I'm like, that's not the way you approach me. It's not the way you approach anybody. It's just, it's a violation of boundaries. And I think women are kind of made to feel like their boundaries are allowed to be violated. That it's okay because, you should be flattered that somebody's paying attention to you. That was certainly the old script. I think nowadays if you ask people, they'd be like, what? Like, that wouldn't be a thing now. But I find myself, so again, I don't know. I don't, so when we talk about vulnerability too, it's like you want to be open to people, but you also want to trust your instinct about people who are not there to respect your boundaries or respect who you are. And so you need to, cut that off at the pass, really, and follow your intuition. And if people say, oh, well, you're not being fair to that person, I don't need to be fair to that person. I don't know them. And in this kind of a world, where there's not really a good way to necessarily reliably always vet information from an analytical standpoint. Yes, we were able to look at that profile and go, yeah, this guy's not who he says he is. Logic will tell you that too. But yeah, it's just really a, and again, I think for women, they find it unsettling. It reminds me of, there was something, and again, I think it was a class that somebody had given like on self-defense. And so there was men and women in this class. It was some kind of a class on that. And in society, we tend not to pay attention to our gut, focus on the mind, and need to listen holistically. Well, exactly, yeah. And that's kind of, that's what I'm getting at. Also, that's why I'm teaching intuitive development. Oh, and by the way, that was the other thing at the event last night. At least 3 people came up to me and said, if you do an intuitive development class in person here, I'm already on the list. Sign me up. And so Corinna's like, are we going to do a class? So I'm trying to figure out where this is going to fit into the 8 million other things I have going on this fall, but I may end up doing an in-person one there with people who want to do it in person. But it's really, I don't know. But I find that it's a, yeah. When it comes to okay, I was talking about this class. There was people in this class who were saying. So the instructor had actually asked, and there were men and women, and said, okay, what kind of preparations do you make when you're going to be going out and you're going to be out late at night by 8 hours? And the men are like, what are you talking about, preparations? Like, what preparations? And the women are like, oh, well, I make sure that I have my mace. I make sure that I have this. I make sure. And they start going down this list. And the men are like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, there it is, there it is right there. It's like, you need to protect yourself. Think about how many times and think about the fact that you often get blamed for your own things. If a woman goes out and has, dresses a certain way, or wants to show off any part of her body, it's kind of, and anything happens, then it's like, well, see, you invited that. That's what they say. And it's like, why? I've never understood that. Or I had a case, I think I talked about the case. Maybe I didn't. When I was first going out with the guy who I ended up marrying and then later divorcing, but the guy I had married, when we were dating, there was a guy in one of my classes. We had all exchanged phone numbers because it was a small writing group, like writing class. And so it was just like everybody, they'd just done that. And also the instructor had the numbers too, because this was pre-internet. You didn't have email addresses and stuff. So, or there was internet, but it was extremely rudimentary. Like most people didn't necessarily have email addresses. So this guy started calling my house, and he told me, we need to be going out because you and I are meant to be together. I was like, excuse me? I was like, no. I was like, no. And he was belligerent about it. He would call me, if I hung up on him, he'd call me back like 10 times. Like, it was literally harassment. And I told him, I'm like, and the thing is, I told him I had a boyfriend. He says, I don't believe you. So the next time he called, I made Mike answer the phone. And then after that, he never called back again. But what makes me angry about that is, like, I shouldn't have to invent, I did have a boy, but I shouldn't have to invent somebody to be there. It's like, no, if I just tell you, no, I'm not interested in being involved with you, and no, you can't touch me, that's sufficient. That should be enough. I shouldn't have to feel like, oh, I better pretend that this is going on, or, oh, I better go out covered head to toe just in case anybody looks at me. I don't like that. To me, I'm like, why do I not have a right to live in a free society? I'm not in a society where, there's a theological law that requires me to cover up, And again, it's not necessarily like I'm that comfortable walking around, I tend to be, I'm somewhat front loaded, so sometimes people can see that, but I just, why is that something I have to be like this? Like, why do I have to be that way all the time? I don't know. And I don't necessarily care that people look. It's like, okay, well, men look. It's kind of a natural thing. The question is, do you maintain your boundaries with me though? Are you maintaining appropriate boundaries? Are you engaging with me not as, in this way? I don't know why we should be ashamed to put boundaries. Well, no, and that's just it. I'm not personally. And that's probably why I don't really date, because I don't come across as somebody who is, if somebody's going to start, if anybody is predatory, it's not going to go really very well for them. And in the past, when that's come up, it hasn't. So that's just the way it comes across. But these people are creeps. Yeah, well, there are. And that's the problem. But at the same time, people will say not all men, like there's a whole trend around that. I do like to believe that it's not all men. And I do know that there are people who are decent and respectful and who can build a relationship with you and maintain proper boundaries. And similarly, it goes the other way too. There's some men, if they're very attractive, might attract a lot of female attention. Especially if they're well known in any way, shape, or form. Again, I always feel like I don't have a right to violate their boundaries either. I have been involved with, thank you, exactly, predatory attitude. So from an intuitive perspective, would ceiling protect against these creeps? Yeah. Well, this is it. That's the bottom line, is that you have an instinct. Would veiling protect? Yeah, against these creeps. Yeah, exactly. Would veiling protect? That's an interesting question. Certainly protection of your energy, like we had talked about in last week's class, can. I go out and I do an energy protection every morning. The one I talked about in class is one that's definitely I find that one is helpful. When I forget to do that one, sometimes somebody slips in. But also I feel like sometimes, even if you can't avoid running into somebody, you have that instinct that tells you, stop this immediately. Like, don't let this go any farther than where it's gone. So, or to take a different course of action in a particular situation. Yeah, these are the things that tell us. But I do find often that my daughter has my genetics with the front loaded, and the teachers, mostly females, would dress code her for stuff for flat could not wear, no repercussions, and the nurse told her it was, oh yeah, I love it when you're told, yeah, when you've got, when you're front loaded, as I like to call it, for male that you're distracting for male teachers and students. Oh, I'm sorry, and to me, I'm like, well, that's just the thing. I'm like, well, why can you not control yourself? I mean, why is it? I think John Oliver had talked about that in his sex ed videos, where he was talking about what was it? He was talking about, it was the sex ed one where there was these videos about teaching a girl how to properly say no. And he's like, well, that's great that they're teaching that girl how to say no, but they're not very good at teaching that guy how to say, how to hear it. You're not really, this is what I mean when people try to tell me, oh, things have changed in society, or, oh, well, women are being too aggressive or too, no, we're not. It was really never okay, and when you have to do that kind of thing, so nothing's changed since I've been in school. Well, it's maybe taken a slightly different form now, but it's to a certain degree, it's not the same because the script is not the same. Hence the reason we have the School of Feminine Myth. I think I did a boost post on that the other day. If people are interested in donating to that to get that up and running, I do actually have that link posted, and I'm going to be on Joanne. I'm going to be on Joanne's podcast on the 12th. So one lady told me she was giving promiscuous vibes. It was a tank top with a flannel shirt. And I'll be like, okay, this is not very like a spiritual coachy of me to say, but if somebody said that to me, I would be like, well, maybe you shouldn't be such a pervert. If somebody said that to me, that would be my response. I'd be like, I'm promiscuous? No, maybe you're just a perv. Like maybe you need to think about something else than staring at body parts. Or, and especially, and the thing is, a lot of times it's other women that will do that too. Oh, you need to, go away. I said that to the principal. Yeah. Well, and rightly so, because, yeah, a lot of times, it reminds me of the story that they had of the girl there was a boy who kept pulling on her bra strap in class, and she turned around and punched him and bloodied his nose. And the mother, who was like an emergency room nurse, had to come in, and they were angry at her for being late. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was just doing triage on somebody. And when they sat her down, they said, your daughter hit somebody. And when she found out why, she's like, oh, so what's happening to him? And they're like, oh, but what? So why is she looking at my daughter? Yeah, it wasn't the males. It was the women. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And what was it? In this case, this girl had complained to her teacher that this guy was doing it, and he goes, oh, just ignore him. And that's kind of stuff my mom used to say, oh, just ignore him. I think I'm especially sensitive to this. I had an episode which I told people about when I was 20, just a while ago now, but I remember it very clearly. I was in Atlantic City, and I had, what'd you call it? I was in Atlantic City, and I was walking down the boardwalk. My family was with me, and this guy came up out of nowhere and literally grabbed me by the front. He came up and he put his arms around me and he grabbed me this way, and I pushed him off, and I turned around, punched him, and I said, get away from me, mother effer. And my mom, you know what my mom said to me? That wasn't nice. Oh, so I'm supposed to think that that's cute? Like, that's the thing too. There can be sometimes female reinforcement of that, which is like, ew, good for you. Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, no, like, wow, yeah. And to me, it's not so incredible that would happen in Atlantic City. This is why I don't go to Atlantic City and don't really advise anybody to go there, because it's just kind of a dodgy place. But this was just like, yes, oh my God, yeah. But the fact that, my mom's reaction was just kind of like, I'm like, so then when she turns around and says like, oh, like she wants to be protective, I'm like, no, you don't. Just stop. No, you don't. Basically protective means you want me to kind of do things a certain way. So no, you don't. Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't want to get my family issues here, but that's just it. And that's why, and you kind of have this line where you walk between feeling like, feeling self-critical too sometimes. And this is interesting. This is going to bring us to our reading for today. Because our first card is conditioning. Okay. I think we were talking about this card recently, weren't we? It was, yep, here we go again. You're a lion, not a sheep. You're a lion, not a sheep. I got the mane to go with it today, right? Lion, everybody has their own lion, lion, not a sheep. And so that means you don't want to necessarily boom chakalaka. Yeah, that's where you don't want to go along with the script, right? The script tells you that you in order to, and that's the thing too. When we talk about collective versus individual, when we talk about the feminine, sometimes that gets interpreted, and I think that's what women sometimes unconsciously do. It's this idea of, oh, we just have to all make nice. I just finished reading my friend's novel, and it's a fabulous novel about the feminine. When it comes out, I'm going to recommend it to everybody. It's really going to be really good. Right now, I think it's called Serana's Resurrection. It's actually like a fantasy type thing, but it's really good. She wants to market it as YA. I think it might be a little beyond that. But what I didn't care for was at the end, some of the characters were just like, well, I'm just going to forgive this person. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know, because forgiveness, first of all, or at least need to clarify what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is often the idea that I'm releasing the emotional impact of this energy on me, but not saying, well, it's okay and they should get off scot-free. Okay? It's not, there needs to be consequences for actions, because when there's not, then people seem to feel like, okay, that's like a license to keep engaging in a behavior that, that I can continue to violate your boundaries. It's okay because there's no consequences for doing that. Our inner feeling of which we're unaware is possibilities. Okay, soaring above, looking at the big picture, wanting to explore opportunities, not wanting to limit ourselves. Right, and we have the awareness card as the thing we are. Awareness is what we're aware of. Isn't that? That's kind of funny. Finally, a brand of forgiveness I can get on board with. Yeah, and it was actually a nun who had told me that. I had been on a Catholic retreat with a group of nuns whom I absolutely loved. And I know people, we hear nuns, they go, ooh, but there are some really great nuns out there. And even though they've kind of pledged their obedience to the church, they kind of rebel in other ways. This woman has actually passed away now. She was in her 90s, actually, when I saw her. Sister Teresina. She was, because there was some situation, I think it was somebody I had broken up with, and I happened to be there, and I was just really, really in an angry state of mind, and she says, well, absolutely, she goes, you have every right to be angry, and she goes, and you should be angry. She says, but I'm going to talk to you about forgiveness. She says, and I'm not telling you should do it right now. She goes, don't do it until you're ready. She says, all that this does is release you from feeling bad about this situation. This releases your anger. When you say you forgive, it's that you are energetically like detaching from that person in that situation. And it no longer, because when we are still sit there in this hateful mindset, that hateful mindset is what, then it ends up eating away at us. And it's like, well, why should we suffer anymore? I had rebel nun mentors that helped me. They seem to hold more truth in that space. Well, exactly. That's why when a lot of people have this very negative like impression of nuns, yeah, and there are some who are, I've had those nuns too, who were just kind of beat you with the ruler kinds of nuns. I've had them too, but many of them, the thing is, they're people who are probably on a spiritual path also and have learned a lot, and they stay in this space because that was the space that they had to develop spirituality. So that's why they end up staying in there. So, but they may have. These were nuns who were practicing Tai Chi, they were doing Reiki. The church actually banned Reiki, calling it an Eastern practice, so they just changed the name to therapeutic touch, which is not what it is. they just kept going, and they just kind of, okay, we'll just slide around that space. And I remember the first time I told them that was when I first met Amma, when I first met my guru. I remember Sister Marguerite, she was like, that's great. I think that's really awesome. Like, they were not like, oh, well, you have to be strictly Catholic. They were just like, no, that's really cool. Like, you're on a path, and that's great, and that's what it should be on. Like, to me, that's the kind of encouragement people should offer. And if they offered that kind of encouragement, then more people might stay in the fold. But anyway, awareness. Becoming aware of who you are. And yeah, I think when you establish those kinds of boundaries, you become aware of who you are as an individual, okay? And you become aware of your inner core, of your inner being. And in that space, you are able to decide what goes and what stays and what goes. And to be able to, again, to explore your possibilities without having to just say, well, I have to worry about what everybody else thinks. I have to go along with the crowd. The crowd might not like what I do. People might not approve of what I do. People might scold me for what I do. But you're you, and part of that training is just you let that go. There's going to be people who are going to do that. You don't want to say, oh, if I do this thing, I shouldn't do it because this will be the consequence. Well, if you feel like you're going to be too wounded by that consequence, maybe you need to, people may need to take that into account. But once you really come into awareness of who you are, then at that point you're able to weather that. And I think too, that's why when people are in transition, it's a bit difficult because maybe that's a point where you're not really aware of who you are. But this is about taking control. This is the Chariot card, okay? Now this is interesting because we have the projections card. Okay, this is the advice. Now, projections can have to do with the way that the inner and the outer can be the same in some ways. Like there's not as much of a difference as we think. So what would that mean in a situation like this? Well, certainly when men look at you in a certain way, again, if we're just talking heteronormative, so-called cisgender relationships, okay? If someone's looking at you in that way, then they are, then they're projecting their soul projection onto you. Similarly, if you feel that way about somebody else, you're projecting your soul image onto them, and that's not who the person is. So oftentimes when somebody becomes obsessive like that, which by the way is another meaning of the devil card, when you have somebody who's obsessive in that way, they don't know who you are, and they may not be interested in who you are. They may only be interested in you as an object, so to speak. And like I said, that kind of projection can happen anywhere. You've got to recognize that there's a projection going on there. And, and ultimately we have the Lovers as the outcome, which is more about the idea of figuring out what it really means to connect to people. And, like I said, if we're looking at the who they think you are, and that's just it, because people really don't know who you are. You've got lust and you've got love right here. It actually, in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck, these cards are almost identical. You have the couple who are facing each other, but with the devil card, they're like chained. They're chained to the foot of the devil. And it's because one is more about this idea of love that's based on not really knowing who you are. Jung has a whole essay on marriage as a conscious relationship, okay? And obviously we don't necessarily have to be married. A lot of people don't get married these days. But if you are, but nonetheless, if you're going to come into a real kind of committed love relationship, it should be based on real love. Not that there's not physical attraction and stuff like that, but it's just that the fact that this person may be projecting that image onto you, of what attracts them physically, what attracts them, what they think you have, or it may be purely physical for some people, but what they think you are or you have without actually really knowing you, and that can even happen with online relationships too. That's why personal connection is so important with people, because then you get to really know the person. Like there's people I've talked to online for ages, and it's like, do I really know them the way I would know them if I saw them and hung out with them every day or saw them regularly? Maybe not. I don't know. It really depends on, if we have, if you have Zoom calls, if you have, camera calls, you might get to know somebody that way. But if it's all exchanged through messages and stuff like that, then you're not going to really necessarily know that person. And it depends on the person, right? It depends on how much that person wants to reveal to you. Because part of the reason that people love social media interaction is because it allows them to kind of hide behind a kind of facade. And especially if people are branding themselves in a certain way. I don't know. My brand is just kind of who I am. So I would have a hard time pretending to be somebody that I'm not. That's why when people say, oh, you should focus more on this or that, I'm like, and how self-aware they are. Yes, exactly. And because a lot of times people will put things out there based on what they think is going to get likes or going to get attention or something like that. And I don't know. I've always, I think a lot of people would say you're just better off being who you are. But there's still people who are going to project things onto you. And, you don't have to be, you don't have to accept that projection. Or you can make it very, very quick that you are not that projection. That's not who I am. I'm not who I am. Online and off. Well, right, exactly. In personal interactions too. But online, there's like another layer where people can create kind of an illusory kind of environment. So anyway, we're over time right now, so I'm going to get on. I actually don't have any appointments today so far, so I'm actually going to clean my house today. And I know I have to start getting videos together for next week, plus we have the class tomorrow. Oh, plus I've got to edit my podcast and get that up for Katonia. So yeah, so again, like I said, some of you I will see this weekend. I know, Sud, I said I wasn't going to see you this weekend, but other people, yeah, I will see people I'm going to see on Sunday, which will be great. Otherwise, I will be back tomorrow also. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow anyway. Great kickstart for the day. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, so, and the one people I'll see in class tomorrow, yeah, that one should be a fun one. I've got to try to figure out how I'm arranging things for that one. But, and yeah, definitely check out the GoFundMe if you're interested. And thanks, I laughed and cried. Yeah, it's kind of both, isn't it? I'm glad you guys found this useful today. And yeah, so onward, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.